Hi, my name is Nick, and today I'll be talking about the board game The King's Armory, a tower defense board game. This is a fully cooperative board game for 1 to 7 players, with the gameplay time listed as about 3 hours. Although in fine print it says adjustable to 30 minutes to 4 hours, so take that for what you will. The designer of this game was John Roth, and the art was done by Matt Houlihan, with the publisher being Gatekeeper Games. This was originally a Kickstarter project back in 2015, and since it was funded, I don't know if there's ever been any additional print runs. So with that said, it is a hard game to find. If you want to buy the game, I think you may only be able to get it secondhand, although some friendly local game stores may have a copy in the back shelf somewhere, so definitely check out your local game store before giving up and trying to find it online. With that said, I have seen discussion about a second edition of this game, so stay tuned for that. I'm not sure if it actually will happen or not, but I definitely saw that some discussion on that. This is, not surprisingly, a tower defense themed board game if you didn't catch the title. You, and maybe just you if you're playing by yourself, or some friends, are various heroes such as mages and knights and warriors and archers, trying to fend off wave after wave of minions that include trolls and orcs and goblins from destroying the King's Armory. And then finally, in the final wave, you also have to fight off a boss minion. So with that said, I first want to go over the components of this board game, followed by the gameplay, and finally I'll give you my thoughts as to whether I like the game or not, and why. Here I have all components of the King's Armory laid out on the table. Up here we have the various monster tokens organized by their difficulty, with 1 being the weakest type of monster, 5 being the strongest. These black B tokens represent the boss monsters. And on the other side of all the monster tokens are the statistics of the monster, as well as a picture of what the monster looks like. I'll go into more detail what those numbers mean later. Here we have the 3D towers that come with the game. And then for each class of hireable, there is 3 different levels from 1 to 3. Like the heroes, the hireables have all their statistics on these stat cards that you referenced during the game. These are the dice that are meant for the heroes to use. Then there's another 20-sided die, which is for the monster attacks. And then there's this 12-sided die, which is used for determining what kind of monsters are going to enter each wave. For the boss monster tokens, they also have their own stat sheets. As you saw, the tokens themselves do have statistics for the monsters, but each monster also has additional effects that come into play. So those are explained on their stat cards. There's 4 different types of playing cards that come with the game. There's reward cards, which is just simply gold you can acquire after you complete a wave, and then with that you are able to purchase various things to help you for the future waves. There's these armory cards, which are essentially just very overpowered weapons that you can purchase between waves to help you defeat these monsters. There's equipment cards that you start with and can be purchased on the upper left. There's these reinforcement cards, which also can be purchased to help your team defeat each wave of monsters. And then there's the board itself. The board is actually comprised of a bunch of tiles that connect together like puzzle pieces. There's variations on how you can put the tiles together to create various paths that are more or less difficult, and the rulebook explains the various path constructions you can make. So with that, I think we can start bringing in the monsters, and to figure out how many monsters we will be rolling for, we look at this monster selection grid. And for wave 1, we see that this is the number of monsters we're going to be rolling for, and it's a total of 3 monsters. And then we see if there's any modifications based on the player count, which is in this game will be 2. We see dashes for each column. So based on the player count, be more or less monsters, that's this column. So this is, again, the number of monsters. This is a modification to the dice roll that we will be rolling to determine the level of difficulty of the monster. And then this is the number of reward cards you pull at the end of a successful wave. So you can see that with 2 heroes, you're actually not modifying anything. So what it says over here is indeed what the result will be. So to start, we will roll for the first of these 3 monsters by rolling the 12-sided black die. And the first number is a 1, which is, in this case, a low number is an easier monster. And as shown on the chart, 1 means a level 1 monster will be entering the map at the top. There's an odd. Odd is on the left side, at least based on the direction that you're looking at in the camera. And even is on the right side. So since I rolled a 1, it's an odd number. So this monster will be entering on the left side, since that is the odd side. We see that this monster has 6 health points. So I will find 6 health points worth of health tokens. The other information shown here is the type of attack the goblin has. There's 3 types of attack. You either have a supernatural attack, a melee attack, or a ranged attack, and that will then determine the type of defense resistance the heroes will be able to use against attacks from this monster. The 6 is its dodge ability, how difficult it is for the heroes to hit. This 4 corresponds to the range of this goblin's attack, so it can attack up to 4 spaces away. This is the number of damage points that its attack deals. This 4 is its movement. Also difficult to see, and well, I guess now you can see it better, but the arrow is yellow, and that determines then the path this monster will travel on the board. 12 is how difficult the enemy is to hit. It will go 1, 2, 3, 4 and stop there. Right after an enemy finishes its movement, it will attack a hero that is within its attack priority. The first option is it will attack an ally that is tanking them. In this case, I don't currently have Valkor tanking that monster, so no ally is currently tanking the monster. So we look at the next priority option, which says the closest ally in any direction. Well, Valkor's essentially right next to the goblin, so the goblin will attack Valkor. So with that, we use the monster die, this white die. We are checking to see if the monster is going to hit Valkor. We first can look at the hit modifier on the monster, which is a 6. So 6 will be added to this die roll. Since it's a supernatural attack, we look at Valkor's statistics sheet and see that his dodge value is a 12. So if the total is 12 or higher, the monster will hit. And it's a 5 plus then the 6 for the monster's hit roll modifier. And that's only 11, so Valkor actually was able to successfully dodge that attack. And will now roll for the next monster that will come onto the board. And again, just quick review, there's a total of 3 monsters that are going to be entering. We've completed the first one, and we have 2 more left. So when it is your turn, you have a set number of actions at your disposal to use. And in Ember's case, she has 4 actions.
So in terms of what you can do with those actions, you can use an action to move. When you choose an action point to move, you get to move up to your hero's movement rate, which in this case is 6. Or you can use an action point for an attack or ability. So here, an ability that costs 2 actions is Wolf Hunt, which says imaginary wolf, let's say, that's at her side that has a range of 4 and can run after enemies and do damage. And it also slows them. So that could definitely be an interesting option in some cases. Otherwise, the majority of her attacks are all ranged as shown here. So a single shot, which is just 1 action point, volley of arrows for 3 action points, and called shot had 3 points. So how do each of these attacks differ? Well, first we can see their action points are different costs. The first one is just 1 action point, the next 2 are both 3. They're all ranged attacks. The range of the attack differs. So the first attack actually can shoot up to 9 spaces away, whereas 6 for the second and 7 for the last one. In terms of what gets added to the die that you're rolling, the first one is you get to add 10, the second one you're adding 8, and the last one you're actually adding 14 to the die roll, which is quite a lot. So it's almost a guaranteed hit with this last attack. Not many enemies have a dodge rating greater than 14. So unless you roll a 1 with the attack die, Ember's attack die, which is automatically a miss, you're pretty much going to get a hit with that attack. But then the cost is that it's 3 action points. The next column is damage. So if you successfully hit the enemy, you're doing 2 damage, 1 damage, 3 damage, assuming no ranged resistance on the enemy you're attacking, and then crit range. So for a lot of attacks, the assumption, the unwritten rule is if you roll a 20, it's a crit. That's for sure the case for monsters. If a monster rolls a 20, they get to double the damage of their attack. Usually that's the case for heroes, but some heroes have then exceptions as denoted here. So in the case of this first attack, actually a 19 or 20 allows the attack to be a crit. And then this column explains the crit modifier. So for this first attack, it doubles the damage. So instead of doing just 2 damage, you're actually doing 4 damage. Additionally, this last column is kind of difficult to summarize because it depends on either is going to be tied to the crit or it's just a explanation of the attack. So in the case of this attack, the special, if you get the crit, you also deal 1 bleed damage or bleed effect to the enemy. In the case of the second attack, the volley of arrows, you don't need to roll any kind of crit to achieve the special. The special it's a 3x3 area attack, which, as you can imagine, seems quite powerful, but the downside is that you're only doing 1 damage. So, but in short, that gives you an idea of how this game plays. So I'll move on to what I think of the game.
So what did I think of this game? Overall, I really enjoyed playing it. I think one of the reasons why I really enjoy this game is how easy it is to start playing. I mean that for 2 reasons. One, the rules themselves aren't overly complex. I think if one person knows how to play, you can easily teach other players how to play right away. You could probably just start the game, ask what heroes they want to play, and get going, which I don't think you can do in many other games of this type of genre. The other reason why I think it's quick to play is there's not a lot of setup. Compared again, other games of this genre, such as what comes to mind to me at least is like a Descent or a Gloomhaven or a Zombicide. There's a lot of setup in those games. You have a lot of components you're putting on the board and referencing the setup guide, whatever, and it takes time. For this game, you have just a few things you're actually putting on the board, a few decks you have to shuffle and deal out a couple cards to each player, and you're good to go. So I really like that aspect of this game. The other reason why I like the game is the
replayability value. You have a bunch of different bosses that come with the base game, a bunch of different heroes that come with the base game, and then in addition to that, you have all these different monsters of all these different levels or difficulties. You have the ability to change the path structure for each game, and you can choose to do a 5-wave game or a 7-wave game, and then the player count variability, of course, you can play from 1 to 7 players. Different equipment, armory, and reinforcement cards for each game. So a lot of variety, and I didn't even really touch on it when I went over how to play the game or components, but there's an additional monster entry tile that you could add to your game, and that adds even more variability. So I think just in the base game itself, without any expansion content, you will be able to have ample amount of plays of this game before you're going to start feeling bored, if ever. So I really like that part of the game. In terms of things I don't appreciate so much about this game, I would have to say the component quality. This game was published in 2015, so we have to keep that in mind and compare this then to games from back then. But even for 2015, this game, I think, was on the poor side of the spectrum in terms of component quality compared to the other games. And it was a smaller publishing company, and maybe this publishing company's first game, but again, compared to what I would say the industry standard was in 2015, I don't think it really lived up to that. Probably case in point are these 3D towers. Now, of course, the publishing company could have just gone with a 2D structure or a 2D tile to represent the towers, and I appreciate the desire to have a 3D component for the tower since it's a tower defense game. Having these 3D elements on the board, of course, looks nice, but unfortunately, they're very poor quality. The paper, it's really almost a thick paper used to make these. Are almost like origami towers, and so I don't feel like they'll hold up well over time. It creates a difficult storage situation. I purposely only made 2 when I got the game because I was thinking to myself, if I made all 7 of these, I don't really think they'll all fit in the box, and I can't imagine taking them apart and putting them together again. You would not be able to do that. That's why I mentioned you might even want to just glue the things together. You do only really need one person to know how to play the game. I think if you had one person teach them how to play, which I said, you could probably just start playing right away, and then told the players that the rule book was actually 62 pages. I don't think anyone would even believe that because it's not an overly complex game by any means. But regardless, that's something I think other players may feel kind of negative about. But like I said, overall, I really enjoy this game. If you are able to find it in your local game store, I recommend buying it because there's a lot of good content here. I think there's a lot of replayability in the box. If you don't find it in your local game store, but somehow come across a secondhand copy of like a thrift store or something like that, then I definitely recommend buying it. Because I don't really know of a game out there like this that mimics the tower defense. Well, in my mind, what a tower defense game should be, as well as this one does. So, with that said, I appreciate the time you gave watching this video. My name's Nick, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thanks.